When life suddenly changes and you feel like you have lost control and you start to feel stuck and powerless, how do you take control when you don't know where your life or the world or this moment is going? And here's the number one thing I want you to know. You don't need to know where this moment or where the world is going. You just need to know where you are going next. And one of the things that has happened, certainly in the pandemic, but it always happens when there's any kind of reckoning in your life, is that when you have something suddenly happen and your life is fundamentally changed, whether it's a death or somebody says, I don't love you anymore, or you're fired, or you find yourself with a scary health diagnosis, there is a line in the sand. There is a life before that happened and then a life after that moment happened. And that line in the sand, that reckoning that happens, and it happens for all of us, whether it's happening for you right now or it has happened in the past, I'm telling you, there is a gift inside of this, even the darkest moments, because every single sudden change in your life that makes you feel like you've lost control and you no longer know where you're going, it's like hitting the giant pause button. And if you lean into the moment, there is a chance for tremendous wisdom and growth. There are things that you can do right now in order to take control of where you're going, of what you're thinking about. And you can start to take this moment of change and you can use it to be able to take and make an intentional pivot in the direction that is meant for you next. And one of the things I want to say about this moment is, look, if you're losing loved ones, you are terrified, this has made you lose your job, you feel like you're in that moment where everything, you're falling off a cliff, you're trying to pack a parachute, you're grieving. And so you got to give yourself space to grieve the losses that you're feeling. And when you get a little bit of distance from the grieving and the waves of grief and fear that you're feeling start to space out. They don't ever leave you, but over time, those waves of, holy cow, and I don't want this, and I can't handle this, and why is this happening to me? Time will start to lessen those waves. You will gather your feet underneath you again, and you will absolutely be stronger and be a better version of yourself based on this incredible challenge that you're facing. And I can say that even though you may be facing a tough time, because if you think about your life, you've faced extraordinary challenges and there hasn't been a single one that hasn't made you a better and stronger version of yourself. And this moment will be no different. So I want you to understand that when you get out of the cycle of grief, this is an enormous reckoning, an enormous opportunity for you to hit the pause button and for you to start to ask yourself the question, what do I want my life to look like? Because I think too many of us are sitting here going, I can't wait for my life to get back to normal. I can't wait for this to end. I can't wait to things to go back to normal. And in any moment of reckoning, what happens is there's actually parts of your old life that you don't want to go back to. And there is a tremendous amount that you're learning in this moment that you need to pause and take in and say, okay, based on what I've just learned, based on my old life, when I look ahead to my new life, what is it that I want my new life to look like? This next chapter, I can turn to a blank page, I can take all this wisdom, all this resilience, all this strength, and I can write something new. That's what I want you to know. You don't need to know where the world or where everything is headed. You just need to know where you're going to head next.
How do I rebuild my relationship with myself when starting from ground zero?
So, Mel, this is a pretty broad, expansive question, and so I thought maybe we would talk about this and then we would narrow down into specifically what we're talking about. So starting from ground zero might mean, hey, I had a traumatic event happen to me, or maybe my life is changing. Maybe I'm reaching a point in my life where I need to do something different. I'm learning that everything I've done to make me happy or fulfilled or satisfied isn't working. So for Federico, where do we even start? What do we talk about?
You actually start the exact same place we all have to start. Every morning in the mirror. Every single morning in the mirror. You see, the most important relationship that you have in life is the one you have with yourself. It is the foundation of every relationship that you have. It's the foundation of how you experience life. And what we're going to punch a hole through today is the fact that every single human being has a disgusting, ugly, self-destructive habit that nobody is talking about that is part of your morning routine.
Yeah.
And here's the habit. Federico and everybody on the planet currently stands in front of the mirror as they brush their teeth. Hopefully you're brushing your teeth and wiping that gunk out of your mouth, right? So we get rid of the dragon breath. But as you're doing that, you're doing one of two things. Every human being does this. You either beat the daylights out of yourself and you focus on all the stuff you need to fix, the things you hate, the parts of yourself you can't stand. And that's the good news, because the majority of people are doing the other thing. This is sad. The majority of people cannot even look at themselves in the mirror because they are disgusted or they are disappointed or they don't like how long they've let themselves go. And so every morning, part of your morning routine right now, and this goes so down to the core of what's not working and what you can easily flip and change. Because if you stand in front of the mirror and you can't even look at yourself, that is a habit of self-rejection that gets repeated every single day. You are not even secure enough with yourself and accepting enough of yourself to look at the mirror and see, holy cow, because here's the other thing I want everyone to understand right now. We're going to explain the high five habit, but here's the first breakthrough. You're either, be honest with yourself, which do you do? Do you not look in the mirror or do you focus on the things that you need to fix?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do look in the mirror and yeah, there's certainly, I'm going through the day. I'm like thinking how I could have done things differently, what I need to do the next day. Yeah. So I do look in the mirror.
Okay.
Yeah. I tend to avoid looking in the mirror. Yeah. Why is that?
You tell me.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, think about it. Why do you think you don't look in the mirror?
I've never thought that it was a necessity to gaze upon myself I mean, I'm sure I glance. There's a picture of me in the mirror, but it becomes second nature in a way.
Yes.
And so I don't beat myself up so much. I mean, that's a different sort of story that we tell ourselves. But I've never thought about the power of looking in the mirror and how that might actually benefit me.
Well, I want you to consider it's not a reflection. There are two human beings in the bathroom with you every morning. There's you.
And my daughter, she's always
so now there's four.
bothering me in the bathroom.
Or the dog or whatever, or there's two human beings.
Right.
There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror. And the human being in the mirror is really trying. And they are in need of your support. And they are in need of your encouragement. And they need you to wake up and to see them, and they need you to stop beating them up, and they need some encouragement. And this is a really deep thing. And it begins every morning by simply taking a moment and being with the human being in the mirror, which I think represents your soul, your spirit, your potential. For people that, kind of like the inner child work and that stuff, it represents the person inside you that's still trying to heal. And if you begin your day every day by not looking in the mirror or by picking apart the things you don't like, 91% of women do not like how they look.
Wow.
50% of people cannot look in the mirror. And what you just said is exactly right. Most of us, it's so casual, spend that moment drifting into the day where we start to think about all the things we need to do. Or, if you're like a lot of us, you're already pile driving yourself going, I got up too late and I got to answer that email and I didn't get this done and and then you catch yourself in the mirror and you then start, oh my God, I look like crap and I got to be on a Zoom call in 8 minutes and I haven't walked the dog yet. And the pile driving begins. And you guys know that once your attitude goes negative, it's going to continue to take you down. And so first things first, we got to break the habit of self-rejection. And we need to create a new habit of partnership, trust, encouragement, compassion, connection to self. Yeah. Because if we can start to help you every morning to start your day with a little bit of partnership and compassion with yourself, if you can build the ability to like yourself, even if you're not where you want to be in life, it won't matter if other people don't like you, because that can't change the fact that you like yourself.
Yeah.
And so this isn't about being a narcissistic asshole. This is not about being a jerk. This is not about being selfish. This is not about being some cocky, overconfident. This is about compassion. This is about support. This is about your most fundamental, profound needs. Love people, use things. That's your book.
Yeah.
None of us know how to love ourselves, and it begins every morning with this new habit I want you to create that I created during a terrible moment in my life called the high five habit. You may or may not have seen the TED Talk that I gave a few years ago. One of the things that surprised me the most about that talk is that we hear from people around the world that write about one segment in particular. And let me play that segment for you because it sets up the conversation for today. And it's this concept of parenting yourself. When you become 18, nobody tells you that it's now going to be your job to parent yourself. And by parent yourself, I mean it's your job to make yourself do the crap you don't want to do so you can be everything that you're supposed to be. And you're so damn busy waiting to feel like it. And you're never going to. My son never feels like getting off his DS. That's my job. Get off the damn DS. Kendall, clean up the Barbies. If you're going to have a nude party in my bathroom, at least clean it up. God, chew with your mouth closed. We're not in a barn, for crying out loud. All right, dinner's coming. Get out of the pantry. As parents, and you were a kid, your parents make you do the things you don't feel like doing because you won't. Ever. Not now, not then, not ever. And even when you get good at something, you'll figure out something else you don't want to do. And then you'll plateau out and you'll get bored and you're like, I hate this job, it's boring. But will you look for a new one? No, you'll just bitch about that one. It's very, very simple to get what you want, but it's not easy. Wow. You know, that talk was 6 years ago. I cannot believe how little my kids were back then. And I also hate watching it because that was the first time I'd ever given a speech. So my voice is like really screechy and I swear, which I typically don't do on stage ever. So woof. Anyway, this concept of parenting yourself is really, really important for you to wrap your brain around. And let me dig into it just a little bit. I write extensively in part 2 of the 5-Second Rule book about how we make decisions. And the fact that we make decisions not based on what we know we need to do, not based on our goals, but based on how we feel right now. It's your feelings that make the decision for you. It's one of the reasons why parents are so important for kids, because if we let it up to kids to do whatever they felt like doing, they'd never go to school, they'd never do their homework, they'd never use their manners, they'd never learn to eat correctly, they'd never do anything. They'd just sit around and watch TV all day. That's the job of a parent. What most of us don't realize, though, and this is what I was alluding to in the TED Talk, is that when you become 18, when you move out of the house, when you're an adult, you have to parent yourself. Here's the rub. You're never, ever, ever, ever going to feel like doing the things you need to do in order to have what you want. You're always going to need to push yourself. You're always going to need to parent yourself. So what is the net advice on this? What is the bottom line? The bottom line is no one's coming. No one. No one's coming to push you. No one's coming to tell you to turn the TV off. No one's coming to tell you to get out the door and exercise. Nobody's coming to tell you to apply for that job that you've always dreamt about. Nobody's coming to write the business plan for you. It's up to you. And because you're only ever going to do the things that you feel like doing right now or that feel good right now, unless you understand that you've got to parent yourself, you got to push yourself, you're not going to make your dreams come true. You're just not. We're not wired that way. You weren't born that way. You weren't that way when you were growing up, and you're certainly not that way as an adult. And there's a tremendous amount of liberation that comes when you accept the fact that you're always going to need to give yourself a push. I had two habits that were always a telltale sign for something's wrong in Mel's life. I would rearrange the furniture in the house, and I would spend money that I didn't have. It was almost like a way to pretend my problems weren't real. And we do the exact same thing with booze, by the way. We do the exact same thing with food, by the way. That reaching for something that you know isn't good for you becomes the pattern that you repeat when you feel like shit, when you feel like you have no power, when you feel like things are out of control, when you feel down on yourself. You reward yourself with those things temporarily. And so again, write down your goals. So what are the boundaries with money? What do you need to make? What do you want to put away? Be realistic in the beginning so that you can achieve it. Figure out what you need to do in terms of if you were actually doing that. I've always wanted a six-pack and I don't have it. And I don't know, and I've never had it. And when I finally stopped complaining about it when I got honest about what it was going to require. Oh, I'm dead serious. Dead serious about this. At my, at 49, with my affinity for alcohol and my love of carbs and my distaste for exercise, I have a small problem on my hands if I want a six-pack. So if you were to go forward, right, and think, okay, well, if a year from now I had a six-pack, what would my day-to-day life look like? Ooh. And you can get very clear that you're not committed to that. And then you can stop beating yourself up for the shit you never intend on doing, right? So what I realized is I can spend 4 minutes a day in a hotel room or in my bedroom doing planks, and my arms look great, and everybody else will think the rest of my body's in shape. And we're good. We're good. Yes. It worked like a charm. So you might want to get honest with yourself. Like instead of doing this bullshit, really, I want to be a millionaire, I want to do this. Do you really? Because you can make it happen. You actually can. Look at all the idiots that are making money. You can make money. But you're going to have to roll the clock forward just a year and say, okay, if I'm able to put $1,000 a month against my debt, I'm able to make X amount of dollars a month, I'm able to put X amount of dollars in savings. What do I need to be doing a year from now to make that happen? And what are those habits that are there a year from now that I don't have right now? And then roll yourself back to this moment, just like I explained with exercise. Do I actually not want to have a Manhattan tonight? Nope. Did I want to go to the gym today? Nope. Am I willing to not eat what I ate for breakfast? Nope. Am I willing? I did my 4 minutes. My arms are looking really good. But so bring it back, and then you will have the formula for pivoting at any moment. You time travel forward a year. You investigate the patterns that you have that are giving you the result that you want, and then you back your ass up to right here, right now. And you decide, am I willing to do this now? If I'm willing, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 through all the excuses that are going to be there when you're trying to override your operating system. That's how you do it. Or you have the reality check like I had, which is, oh shit, I just like to bitch. I don't intend on changing, so why don't we get this off the plate? And let's focus on the things that I am actually committed to. In this video, I'm going to show you the specific way that you can use the 5-second rule to stop doubting yourself and worrying so much. Now, a lot of people will tell you, oh, just think positive, or try not to worry. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because it doesn't work. And actually, research shows that when you try to ignore your worries, it can actually make them worse. Look, I understand this topic more than most people because I struggled for decades, not only with worrying and self-doubt, I actually suffered from anxiety and panic attacks for almost 25 years. And in fact, I took Zoloft for 2 decades to control my anxiety. Using the 5-second rule, I've not only been able to stop worrying and doubting myself, I've cured myself of anxiety, and I've been off meds for more than 4 years. I'm panic attack free, and I almost never, ever worrying about anything. And you can teach yourself to do the exact same thing using the rule. First, here's what I want you to know. You're not a worrier. A lot of us call ourselves a worrier, right? Oh, I'm a worrier. You're not a worrier. You have a habit of worrying. That's a very big difference. You've allowed your mind to drift and linger on negative thoughts so many times, it's now a pattern of behavior that you repeat, and you don't even realize it. And that's actually good news, because that means that you and I can use the science of habits to break the habit of worrying and the habit of doubting yourself. In the language of habit research, the 5-second rule is what psychologists call a starting ritual. It's a tool that you can use that will interrupt the negative thought patterns that are encoded in your brain as habits and trigger positive new thought and behavior patterns. The 5-second rule is shockingly effective because it works with all the latest research about habits. What I've learned using the 5-second rule is that I do in fact have control over what I think. And when you use the 5-second rule, you'll discover that you do too. Here's how you're going to use the rule. The moment that you feel your thoughts drift, and have you ever noticed how worrying and self-doubt, they have a way of literally like taking you away from a situation. You can feel your mind go from the present moment to drifting to something negative. Maybe you're sitting at a meeting at work and suddenly you start talking down at yourself and doubting yourself. It happens like that. But the moment that you catch yourself do it, that's a moment of tremendous power. You have a decision to make. You can either sit there and listen to the worry and listen to the self-doubt and let it hijack you, or you can make a decision to assert control. That's when you use the rule. You're going to use the countdown trick, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's essential. Counting backwards interrupts the negative thought pattern. It's also going to awaken your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that you need to override a bad habit and replace your bad habit with a positive new one. So every time you feel your thoughts drift to something negative, or you find yourself worrying about things you can't control, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it'll switch the gears in your brain, it'll interrupt the negative thought pattern, it'll activate your prefrontal cortex, and you've just created a starting ritual that will prime your mind to accept a more positive thought. That is how you use the rule to change. Some days you might use the rule 20 times to interrupt your habit of worrying and doubting yourself. There was this one morning where I walked into the bathroom and I was standing in my underwear brushing my teeth in front of the mirror. And I looked up at the mirror and my first thought was, ugh. I noticed that my jowls were starting to look like saddlebags on a pack horse at the Grand Canyon. And I had like these crazy lines by my eyes, and my neck was really like kind of saggy, and one boob was hanging lower than the other, and my gray hair was coming in. And as soon as I started kind of critiquing my thoughts or my looks and appearance, then my mind, Rich, started going, fuck, I didn't get that email back to that person, and I got that presentation I need to do, and my God, did that speech just cancel again? What the f am I going to do? And then I look down and the dog needs to be walked, and then I think, I got a Zoom call in 9 minutes. Like, I got to get my shit. And before I knew it, my whole mood was low. I felt overwhelmed. I had taken myself down mentally. I just wanted somebody to walk in and be like, Mel, it's going to be okay. Like, you got this, girl. Like, it's lift your head up. You can handle this. I don't know what came over me, Rich. This is pathetic. But standing there in my underwear in front of my bathroom sink, I raised my hand and high-fived my reflection. And I cracked a smile because it's so fucking corny. I even thought of that guy, Stuart Smiley, from the SNL skits. Remember that? I'm nice, I'm kind, people like me. Went on with my day. That was it.
Snapped a photo, though.
No, not that one.
Oh, not that one. Not the first time.
And then I kept doing it. I did it probably for a week or two. And here's the weird thing about it. I started when I woke up after doing this high five your own reflection in the mirror thing. I actually started to feel like I was looking forward to it. And here's why. You know, I've spent a lifetime, just like you, standing in front of the mirror. And what I realize now is that when I'm standing in front of a mirror, I'm either critiquing or picking myself apart, or I'm ignoring myself. And when you start to high five your own reflection, it starts to build a partnership within you, with yourself. When you walk into the bathroom and you see your reflection and you've been greeting it, it's like seeing another person. It's the strangest thing. You start to realize how often you fucking ignore or destroy yourself when you see yourself or beat yourself up. And here's what's also crazy. You have a lifetime positive association with high-fiving other people.
Sure.
As a runner, as a racer, you have gotten so many high fives, Rich. What does a high five say to you when somebody gives you one?
You feel seen, you feel appreciated, you feel energized by it, and it's an exchange of energy. It's not the same, and you talk about this in the book, it's not the same as like self-talk because there's a participation involved in it. There's like a communion aspect to it.
Yeah. And, you know, if you think about it, you're so good at celebrating, seeing, and cheering for other people in your life. You plan birthday parties, you reach out to people when you're worried about them, you help out colleagues, you cheer for your favorite sports teams, you high-five people like Rich as they're running races past you, you buy people's merchandise, you do all kinds of stuff for other people, but nobody's taught you how to do it for yourself. In fact, the reason why it feels fucking weird to high-five your own reflection is because you've been taught to do the opposite.
Why is the default to just beat ourselves down like that? I mean, it is crazy. We would never treat anyone else in our lives, especially the people we care about, the way that we treat ourselves in terms of the self-talk or the narrative or the critique or the, you know, the kind of harshness with which we, you know, judge our appearances, our behavior, the way we, you know, think back on things that we said the other day and just are horrified by our own selves. And it's, I don't know if it's everybody, but it's most people.
Except for Buddhists. I mean, I think that they're like if you're a big practicing Buddhist, that's a monk.
Right.
That's like just
why can't the default be the good things though?
Well,
why is it wired that way?
You know why? There's cognitive bias. There's a bias towards negativity. And it's a protection mechanism that's a default from evolution, that if you remember the bad shit, you're more likely to spot it when it happens in the future.
So you can avoid it.
And here's where I think it begins. I believe my theory is that it begins two places. Either you, or that could be both actually, you either learned the pattern of beating yourself up because you had parents or caregivers that were hard on themselves or hard on you. And so as a child, you absorbed that pattern and you now repeat it and you don't even realize it. So those moments you're like, oh my God, I sound just like my dad or my mom. That is an example of a pattern that you've absorbed. So particularly for women, we've watched our mothers be critical about their appearance. We've watched our mothers ignore and criticize themselves in the mirror. And so we learn that from our caregivers. So that's one place. The second place that we learn it is when the drive in your life becomes fitting in. Fitting into groups in elementary, middle, high school, college, your neighborhood. That feels safe when you fit in. When you feel like you don't belong, you immediately go into a protection mechanism. And I believe a lot of the negative self-talk is a sorting hat type of mentality that we do to ourselves going, I can't be with those people. I can't be with those people. It's safe to be with those people. And you start to see yourself and the world around you as places where you belong and places where you don't. And part of the criticism, as fucked up as it sounds, that we engage in all the time is don't be too big, don't be too loud, don't show yourself too much, don't have blue hair, don't do this, other people won't like you. It starts as a way to protect yourself from being rejected, but the truth is you develop a habit of rejecting yourself.
Right. Meanwhile, you're further divorcing yourself from who you truly are because you're not giving yourself permission to be yourself. That gets sublimated in favor of fitting in and accommodating other people and acclimating your behavior around what will be approved of.
Yes. So for me, I have clearly a lifetime of beating myself up and tearing myself down and regretting decisions that I made. And in the middle of stumbling through life, instead of being like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, being like, you're really fucked up now, Mel. How does that help?
Right.
How does criticizing and being hard on yourself help? So you're in a relationship and you've spent the last couple months really working on yourself, right? You've been going to the gym, you've been reading all these incredible books, you got a gratitude journal. Maybe you're even about to launch your own business. And so you're growing and you're happy, and yet there's a major problem. And the problem is that the person that you're in love with, they're not interested in personal development at all. What do you do? What do you do when you're growing and the person that it might be the most important person in your life isn't growing with you? It's a huge problem, a huge problem. And I want to break it apart for you because this is not something that is going to get fixed overnight. And it's something that you can have a direct impact on. And it's also something that can become very serious. So I want you to pay attention. First of all, you got to understand, you cannot change somebody else. You can bitch at them. You can threaten them. You can guilt them, but at the end of the day, it is up to the person that you're with to decide whether or not he or she is going to change. That said, you can do things that influence whether or not they want to. And so the most important thing with personal development, now remember, what's the key word in personal development? It's personal, is you continue to do you. You continue to read the books. You continue to hang out with the people that inspire you. You continue to push your life forward. You continue to go to the gym. And the thing that you're going to do is you're going to share a lot with your partner. You're going to share about what you're learning. You're going to share about who you're hanging out with. You're going to share about all these cool distinctions and tools that you're learning. You're going to share about the things that scare you. You're going to open up in a way that impacts your relationship. The thing you're not going to do is you're not going to tell them they have to do it too. Because the second that you tell somebody to do something, they're going to say no. You may invite them, hey, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so. You want to come? You can ask them if they'd be interested in reading things. You can ask them questions, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to tell them what to do because it's going to totally backfire. I remember in 1994 when I first met my husband, Chris, he was taking this personal development course, and I honest to God thought he had joined a cult. I mean, I literally was like, oh my God, I met the man of my dreams. Now the dude is like in a cult. And I remember going to his graduation for the weekend program, and everybody was smiling and wearing name tags, and it was totally irritating, and I was threatened. And here's the thing that's interesting. So let me give you some insight on what may be going on for the person that doesn't want to grow with you. I was really confronted. I was really confronted by what I might learn about myself if I took the same course he took. I was also scared that something would change between us. And so it wasn't that I wasn't interested in growing as a person, it was that I was terrified of the process of doing it, and I was scared of what might get revealed inside of me if I started to change or started to look at myself. So I instead did what a lot of people do. Oh, it's stupid, it's a cult, that's for dumb, I'm not into that kind of thing. Well, what happened is over the course of kind of 3 months, as I was dating Chris and as he was kind of taking these personal development courses, I noticed such a shift in him and such a shift in our relationship that I started to become more and more interested in doing the course too. And so it's important for you to make the invitation. It's important for you to ask if they'd ever want to do it. It's important for you to continue to extend the bridge, but don't ever tell somebody that they have to do it, with one exception. If you've done everything that you possibly can to improve yourself, and you're with somebody that's behaving in a way that's destructive or that is degrading you, or that is crossing boundaries that are personal boundaries or safety boundaries, you are 100% within your right to tell somebody that in order to be in the relationship with you, they have to do work on those particular issues. Because that's no longer about personal development, it's about the development of your relationship together. So if somebody says no when they're crossing boundaries or when there's something about how they're treating you that doesn't work for you, then you need to get out of the relationship. because it's no longer about somebody growing with you. It's about you being in a relationship with somebody who is actively doing things to hurt you, to cross boundaries, to make you miserable, and they have zero respect for you because they are not willing to address it. So again, personal development is personal. You can't make somebody change. You need to focus on what you're doing, but make sure you share your journey. Make sure you continue to make the invitation. Don't punish the person when they say no. But if boundaries start to get crossed, if they start to be abusive or destructive or annoying, I mean, Chris, for example, also loves to backcountry ski, something I don't really like to do. So I support him in going, but I don't participate. If I were the kind of person that wouldn't allow him to do it, that was snarky whenever he did it, that would be crossing a line. Then he is allowed to make requests. So remember, personal development is about you personally growing. And the cool thing about personally growing is that as you grow, if you're in the right relationship, eventually the person will come around and want to grow with you. They'll be supportive of what you're doing. That's how they're growing. But when it becomes a situation where you're with somebody that's destructive about what you're doing, that's a major red flag that you need to deal with. How do you love yourself? Words, gifts. You can't give yourself affection. Well, yeah, you can. You remember that thing we used to do as kids where you go, actually, you can give yourself affection. I think, you know how I have this habit? I have this habit of always high-fiving myself in the mirror. I send myself into the day, go get a Mel. That's a form of affection. You can show yourself love through words and through gifts and through actions, because love is a verb. And that's the most important thing to think about when you think about practicing self-love and developing habits around self-love. So love is a verb. What are the actions and habits and thoughts that you would have when you think about how you treat or speak to somebody you love? Self-love is about giving yourself all the things that you freely give to the people that you love. And what's so awesome is that when you learn and start practicing how to love yourself, it expands your capacity to love other people more deeply, because you can't give other people something that you don't give to yourself. And I know you're like, whoa, I love other people, but you don't truly love other people if you can't love yourself, because there's a part of you that doesn't feel worthy. And so you got to practice this stuff. And it's everything. Here are some ways that I practice. First of all, if someone you loved were struggling, what would you recommend they do in terms of how they take care of themselves? First of all, you got to get a good night's sleep. That's a form of self-love. Put good food in your body. That's a form of self-love. Take time for yourself every day. That's a form of self-love. Moving your body and exercising. That's a form of self-love. The biggest form of self-love for me is not criticizing myself. So when I catch myself criticizing myself, trashing myself, beating myself up, I kick that noise and garbage out of my head, and I replace it with something that I would say to somebody that I love. Instead of focusing on the things that are going wrong, I kick that thought out of my mind and I focus on the things that are going right. Another form of self-love for me is I'm constantly soothing and reassuring myself. Mel, hey, I know it's challenging right now, but this is preparing you for something. Mel, I know you're nervous, but you got this. You can face this. And notice I'm using my name, Mel. Study after study has come out that when you talk to yourself and use your own name, it has a much deeper impact on you. You have the experience of almost having someone else be saying it. It lands deeper. And it's also through gifts. I also give myself the gift of buying flowers every time I go to the grocery store. I started doing that a few years ago. I love flowers. I was always waiting for somebody else to give them to me. And it dawned on me, why the hell don't I just buy them for myself? And so I do. And you'd be surprised. $3, $4, $5, you can always find a small little bouquet at a grocery store. Stick it on your desk. It's a reminder that you love yourself. Remember, love is a verb. Just treat yourself how you would treat somebody that you love, and practice it, and you'll get better and better at it. Awesome question.
I just saw someone in the chat actually just said that they wanted to learn how to stop emotionally eating. So that's perfect. Talking about coping mechanisms, like you just mentioned, so many people are under boatloads of stress right now, and some people far more than others. You talk about so many things that we're facing right now. What kind of guidance would you give to people who are struggling to cope in healthy ways?
Well, first of all, the number one thing, so they've just did this huge study. I was talking about this today with my team. They've done this big study where they've looked at absolutely every single thing that you could possibly do in the area of self-help, from exercising to practicing gratitude to changing your diet and eating healthy to hanging out with people that empower you to getting outside, like everything you could imagine, a journaling practice, a morning practice. The number one thing that makes a positive difference in your life, particularly in times of stress. Number one thing, everybody. And it's also, ironically, the one thing we do the least, and that is being kind to yourself. So many of us are so busy drinking the kale smoothies and trying to move our bodies and doing all the stuff, but we're missing the most important thing, which is being kind to yourself. And so if I could say anything, one of the kindest things that you could do to yourself in this moment of time is to lower or change your expectations in terms of how you're showing up. And by changing your expectations, what I want you to do is I want you to accept the fact that this is a challenging moment in time. Accept the fact that you are in a state of fight or flight. Accept the fact that work is a lot harder because you're probably on a parade of video conference calls all day, so you don't even have time to get your work done. And so if you are piling on the same expectations that you had of yourself when you weren't having to deal with wearing a mask and being isolated and sanitizing everything and working remote and dealing with kids at home and being worried about people in your family that are immunocompromised, not to mention all of the stuff that we're seeing unfold with this very important fight for social justice here in the United States in particular, with the political season, you need to change your expectations and realize that right now is a moment in time where your number one priority, be kind to yourself. Your second priority is take proactive steps every day, small. You know me, I am the queen of how little changes change everything. Little steps every day that address the stress in your body, okay? And we're going to give you some tools. And that's what Start Here is for. It's to give you some tools. Because you're living in a state right now of fight or flight. Your nervous system is buzzing all day long because so much has changed and you're having to manage so much. So first of all, you're doing a fantastic job, okay? I don't know if anyone's told you this, but you're doing a fantastic job, okay? Second thing I want to tell you, we're going to get through this, okay? We are going to get through this. The best days of your life are on the road ahead. The third thing I want to tell you is there hasn't been a challenge that you've faced in your life that hasn't made you a stronger version of yourself. And this moment in time will be no different. One of my favorite mantras that I use constantly is I remind myself every day that this is temporary. And what I mean by that is the challenge that you're facing and the stress that you're facing right now is temporary, which will help you take a deep breath and remind yourself that on the road ahead, there are better days coming. And the second reason why I love this idea of remind yourself that this is temporary is because right now, it is so important that you hold on to your dreams because life, after all, is temporary. And if this challenge is temporary, one of the things that will pull you through it, everybody, is dreams that are out there in front of you. If you don't have your dreams right now, you're giving up on yourself. And so one of the reasons why I'm telling you, remind yourself this is temporary. Take proactive steps to lower the stress level in your body and settle your nervous system and change your expectations about what you're capable of doing in one day. You'll remove some of the self-imposed stress, okay?
Yes.
If you listen to people that tell you you're a mom, you don't know anything, you're a woman, you don't know anything about finance, then you're at fault. I don't listen to anybody who I wouldn't trade places with.
So
Let me say that again. I don't listen to anybody that gives me advice. Do you want to be him? Do you want to be your husband?
No.
Okay. Then let him have his opinion. Thank you. I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay.
And you could also say this. Instead of pointing out all the things that could go wrong, as my husband, it would be really amazing if you would help me think of all the things that could go right. But this is something you want to pursue, and what you have to be able to do is to communicate with your spouse. This is something that matters to me, and you either or you get on board and you help me figure out how to start doing this. And every time your husband says something negative, you tell him that's not allowed. See, we train people how to treat us. If you listen to that garbage, he's going to think that you actually want to hear it. He's going to be trained by you that I'm allowed to talk to you that way. No, he is not. In a project that matters to you, you have the right and you must say, do not point out the negative. From you, I need you to point out the positive. I've been married for 21 years. How I behaved in my year 1 through 5, totally different than how Chris and I behaved 21 years later. Your marriage grows. The way you speak to each other changes. You have to mature. You have to demand that as you're growing as a woman and a human being, that your spouse.
Consider you as so greedy, or you
No.
trying to be some bitch or something?
No. No.
It's like, oh my God, you trying to be something or something? You know?
Aren't you something?
But it's okay for him to be something.
Of course it is.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, you know, I just not there in that way yet. So
It's up to you.
okay, so
Your husband is not going to bolster your self-confidence. You have to do it.
okay, so we just
You have to draw a line in the sand about how you are willing to be spoken to. You have to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to do this over the next 5 years.
Yes.
And you have to start looking at the positive, and every single day you got to push yourself to do one small thing forward.
Of that.
You start doing that in 1 month, you'll feel totally different. Your husband's going to kill me. It's more important to get it done than to make it perfect. And when we do live streams like Coffee Talk in a way that actually works, which would mean somebody would be here supporting me, oftentimes we don't get them done because we're always on the move. And so this morning I'm doing it solo. This is certainly not perfect. It's not the way I like to do it. Clearly, if I'm in my PJs and we got people running around and I can't even find my coffee and I don't have anything printed out and I'm not even organized, but we're getting it done. And I think it's important for you to see that even, that especially those of us that are out there in the world doing big things, that one of the reasons why we're able to do big things is because we have trained ourselves to just push forward even when things are not the way that you want them to be going, to keep your cool, to roll with the punches even when you don't have the support that you need. And so, you know, I had something happen yesterday. I was in the middle of giving a speech. So imagine this, you're on stage. You are 20 minutes into your speech. You have 40 more minutes to go. You have 30 more slides to go to, which is what was happening at that point. And all of a sudden, my laptop dies. I mean, just blank, you guys. So I've got an entire audience. I'm through the first third of my speech. I have 2/3 of the speech to go. And my speech is a story that has a ton of videos and photos in it. And my laptop died. And what had happened is the AV team had plugged the laptop into a podium that had no power in it. So my laptop was set up correctly. It was plugged in, but it was plugged into something that had absolutely no power source. So over the course of the hour before the tech check to when I was on the stage, the laptop had run out of juice. And so all of a sudden, here I am, completely cold laptop. I just, you know, had this moment where I thought, the first thing in my mind was, holy cow, what am I going to do for the next 40 minutes? And I could feel my stomach start to go crazy and the butterflies to kick in. And it just, wow. I was extremely panicked for about a second. And then I was like, okay, use the tools. Don't get nervous, get excited, because you can show everybody what looks like in front of a live audience to have a massive technical breakdown and not lose your cool. And so I made a joke about it. The AV team ran up. I said, look, you guys have no power here, so take it back there, get it plugged in, and I'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes while you get this thing set up. Now, meanwhile, I'm thinking, while I'm talking to a live audience, what if they don't get this set up? What am I going to do? How am I going to fill the 40 minutes when the whole speech is not only anchored in the story, but it's anchored in all of these photographs and proof of people's stories from around the world? And so I'm like, don't panic. Don't panic. Use the tools, Mel. And then all of a sudden the guy shouts out, what's your password? You know, because my screen was locked. So then I thought, okay, we're going to get this done. Not a problem. It took about 5 minutes for things to get back up and running. And it was one of the longer 5-minute periods of my life, but I got through it. And one of the reasons why I got through it is because I've trained myself to roll with the punches. That's what I've trained myself to do. So I want to give everybody the aha moment that I find to be so profound and so helpful that I have read in your work. And that is when you have shared that the reason why you can go to therapy, or you can watch Dr. Nicole and I on this live stream and go like, bing, oh, cool, I can try that. I can do this. I can do that. The reason why it's so hard to implement behavior change has to do with the part of the brain that you're using when you are watching a video like this, or reading a book that's a self-help book, or listening to a podcast, or you're in a therapy session where you're calm and you're present and you're intellectual, versus what's going to happen when you walk into the kitchen and you see that everybody in your family has made lunch and made nothing for you and left a mess for you to clean up, and you lose your fucking mind, even though you promised you were going to practice self-healing. Yeah. Can you explain to everybody the two different modes of the brain, the one you use to learn shit and the one you're actually dealing with when it comes to changing conditioning and trauma patterns and all the shit that we all have, regardless of what we've experienced in life?
Yeah. So the reason why we're stuck is housed in a part of our brain called the subconscious. I talk about it so often now because this might sound really surprising to a lot of listeners, but in my 7-8 year program that I was in, and in the additional training that I did in psychology, I knew that the subconscious existed, but never once was this really explored and talked about and understood as going to be something that in the clinical room we're working with. It's really largely kept out of the room, and the part of the mind that's talked about more frequently in talk therapy is the conscious part of the mind. So to simplify, this is a really simplified version. Those are the two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. So the issue becomes the most commonly heard example of the subconscious. We're very grateful that we have our subconscious. That's the example that we hear when, right, I'm driving my car home. I mean, maybe not so many of us are driving now, but I'm driving my car home, right? I'm thinking about, like, you know, what I have to do when I get home, maybe. And thankfully I'm alive at home, putting my key in the door, and I don't remember shit about my ride home. How did I get home? Quite literally, your subconscious drove you home. So we love our subconscious, because if we had to consciously attend to everything and remember how to do everything that goes along with being human each and every day, we would be completely debilitated.
By the way, let me just say something for everybody. The reason why your bones feel heavy and you feel like you have taken the SAT 4 times every day and you want to go to sleep at 5 o'clock right now in the middle of this quarantine and this global crisis is because you can't rely on your subconscious to go to the store. You got to be hyper vigilant. Yes. So you're using the part of the mind that you're normally not using all day, which is why you're fucking exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very, I love that you pointed that out, because calorically it benefits we have to remind ourselves that our brain is an actual organ. It lives in a physiological body. Hormones affect it, you know, our imbalance is affected. So it is an entity, and it needs calories to run. And that's the reality of it too. Our brain prefers to run on subconscious autopilot, we like to call it, because it takes less calories. So the issue becomes, though, our subconscious, when we're born, remember, we're born physically and emotionally and spiritually, if you will, dependent on these caregivers. We quite literally cannot care for ourselves. That's the way humans are born. When we're born, our brains are actually shifting their brainwave patterns. So to really simplify it, for the first several years of our life, our brains are in a sponge mode. They're in theta wave state, it's called, which essentially just means that we're taking the world in. This might sound silly, but this is what we're doing. And we're learning how to human, right? We're learning how to be about the world, what these bodies do, how to take care of them. We have feelings. That's really complicated for humans. We're learning about our emotional, our energetic world. If you're a believer that we have a spiritual or soul-based entity, as I do, right, we're learning about all this. So we're taking it in. We're wide-eyed. That's why babies look wide-eyed. And we're coming up with, I call them programs, because I think the computer analogy is the best analogy, right? Beliefs, the programs are everything. Mel, from our habits, we are very habitual as humans, right? The things we do, a lot of times we do the same things we were modeled or taught to do by those around us. This involves self-care. How do we care for our physical bodies? We're very habitual in our beliefs about ourselves, about others, about the world. We're habitual in the feelings. We tend to gravitate around certain feeling states. Mine was stress. Mine was anxiety, right? We then even become habitual with how we cope with our feelings. We tend to do the same things. I kick and scream. You and I, we dissociate, we check out. So all of these habits, I call it our habit self, is stored in our subconscious. So why am I telling you this? All of this is formed at a time where we had no conscious control. The conscious part of our brain wasn't formed. That develops after, right? So we have all of these programs from all of this early time that are running, 95% of the day are running our habit life. We become an adult. I find a great life coach. I find some great therapists. I'm talking in these sessions from my conscious mind, from the mind that can analyze and view. I'm typically, maybe some sessions I'm emotionally activated, a lot I'm not. I'm maybe calm, I'm in baseline, right? Everything looks clearer. Those were those great conversations. Flash forward to during the week. During the week, I'm likely back in habit self. I'm emotionally reactive. Maybe my nervous system is dysregulated. That's a lot of what's happening now. We have a collective that's living a very real traumatic experience. So a lot of our nervous systems are becoming dysregulated. And in those moments, our conscious mind, literally, think about it like this, goes offline.
Right.
And we live those same reactions. And then we feel shameful that we kicked and screamed and yelled or dissociated again 3 days later because we know better. And now we have this spiral of stuff that happens.
You just explained decades of my life where I would say, and how many of you can relate to this? You know this thing you want to change about yourself. You do all this work to figure out what to do. And then you get into that exact same situation that you hoped and prayed and are just so committed to changing. And then you do the exact same damn thing. And so the piece that's really important that I want to unpack to make sure you get it and that it lands, because I think it will help with this shame spiral. Like, why can't I stop cheating? Why can't I put down the drink? Why do I keep screaming at my kids? Why do I keep letting the panic attacks come and I can't get the deep breathing thing? It's because when you talk to Dr. Nicole, and a lot of you are asking, who the hell, how do I find her? The Holistic Psychologist is her Instagram handle. Just get there and follow her. If you are thinking or talking about what you need to do, what part of the brain are you using, Dr. Nicole?
The conscious part of the brain.
The conscious part of your brain. But then you go out into your life and you are subject literally to all of the conditioning. I call them patterns. You can call them programming. They're all hardwired in your nervous system. So before your conscious brain can even get control of your ass, your nervous system and the subconscious part of your brain is like, I recognize this situation. This is where I'm trained to scream. And you suddenly find yourself screaming at everybody when you had promised yourself today you would try to hold it together. And then, of course, you beat yourself up. And this is why you're stuck. It's because we're trying to change with the conscious part, but it's our nervous system that's in control. Am I getting this right?
100%. And even more to piggyback on this and really hammer this home, our nervous system actually does operate below awareness. It is scanning our environment to keep the organism that is us safe, to house, the organism that is us, to keep this physical body alive outside of our awareness. So that removes us even further from control. Meaning, if that's what happens, if I'm walking down a street and it's dark, right? My nervous system might be starting to activate myself. If I get that hair on the top of my back of my neck standing up, right? So what did that? I might not consciously be even noting anything's amiss, but my nervous system is online and is sensing whether it's energetically a shift or whatever it is. So I really want to hammer that home, because especially with those of us, and I believe most of us share a version of trauma. Yep. I'm a believer in beyond the big T that most of us kind of have historically designated as the traumatic experiences. I believe most humans have suffered a traumatic experience. So when that's the case, this is why I highlight this, our nervous system is going to call the shots. It's going to, especially with the climate now, throw us into that fear-based, likely is what's happening for a lot of listeners, reaction. And we actually do lack control, because that's hovering so beneath the surface that it's going to call our shots before our conscious mind can even have a chance.
Amanda on YouTube, how do I protect myself from negative people at work while trying to be positive? So I think about force fields. There are certain people in your life that are negative that you can't avoid. There are probably people at work, just like Amanda has, that are negative that you can't avoid because you got to work with them. There might be people in your family. There might be people in your household. There might be roommates that you have, or people in the classes that you're taking that are negative. Think about force fields, because energy is contagious. Just because somebody else is negative doesn't mean you have to let their negativity seep through into you. My greatest tool in dealing with negative people is to feel sorry for them. I know it's a judgy thing to do, but I feel like if I've got this negative person in my life or around me or at the coffee shop or whatever, isn't it interesting around negative people? They sort of vibrate this nastiness and this passive aggressive stuff, and their like body language is all like, ugh. Instead of letting that seep into you, what you want to do is get the force fields up and get yourself above that person, so you can look at them and basically go, whoa, I wonder what happened to that person that would make them so negative. I wonder what that person's life or home life is like, that they walk into work and they feel like this. Feel sorry for them. There's something about feeling sorry for somebody else, or asking yourself, God, what happened to that person to turn them into such a negative, and to be so hurt? That kind of perspective elevates you above the toxicity, including with your boss. And look, if you got a boss that's a very toxic person, force fields up. What happened to that person? Feel sorry for them and look for another job. You don't want to work for somebody that's toxic. It's not your job to save them. It's not your job to fix them. It's not your job to make their life easier. If there's somebody who is day in and day out toxic and toxic to you, do not make it your job to be their savior. Make it your job to save yourself. So today's training is all about the anxiety, the overwhelm, the fear that so many of you feel based on the belief that you have run out of time, that you don't have enough time, that the time for X, Y, or Z, to go and be a veterinarian, to go to medical school, to launch that business, to leave your wife or husband that you can't stand anymore, to do whatever it is that you've always thought about doing or you've been thinking about doing, that you've somehow convinced yourself that you don't have enough time. And I'm here to tell you that is complete and utter BS. You are in control of the one thing that everybody cares about, that everybody complains about, and everybody's trying to steal from you, and that is your time. And in fact, if you're worried about not having enough time, let me tell you something that I know about you. You're not using your time effectively. You're not being deliberate about how you're spending your time. And the problem isn't time and whether or not you have enough of it. The problem is you're not being completely selfish, deliberate, and just in control of how you're spending it. You're letting other people distract you. You're letting your negative beliefs distract you. And so that's got to stop today. Because here's the truth. Whether you're 70 or you're 77, you have plenty of time to start working toward the things that you care about. And what's so interesting is I'm wearing a shirt right now. Don't you love this shirt? I love this shirt. It's made by a woman named Renee. What's her last name? Bazzetti here in Seattle. And I love her story. Mandy and I were just over. She hand makes these shirts. And I had no idea what her backstory was. She left her husband at the age of what, 46?
44, yeah.
At the age of 44 with two kids.
Court for 2 years.
She left her husband at the age of 44, had 2 kids. She was in court for 2 years. She literally went from being in her home overnight to literally moving in the middle of the night to her own apartment. And she had no idea what she was going to do. And she just told us, she said, at the age of 46, her attorneys told her only 1% of women actually find the gumption to leave a situation like the one that she was in. And most women don't leave because they don't know what they're going to do. They figure, oh my God, I'm so old. I don't have time to figure this out. What am I going to do? Blah, 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 blah. Like the same kind of anxiety. Well, she left. And she told us that the best thing that ever happened to her is that her husband kicked her rear end in divorce court. And she literally left that proceeding with just about nothing. And so she was forced to figure out, what am I going to do with the rest of the time that I have? I'm 46 years old, and there's plenty of women out there and men out there that think, oh my God, at the age of 46, I don't have enough time left. Are you kidding me? I'm 50. I'm just getting started. As far as I'm concerned, I've got the rest of my life to figure out what I want to do and to work towards what I want to do. And so she basically for 3 years started working on making a shirt. It was the thing that she was interested in. And so this is the most important thing I need you to understand. Telling yourself you don't have time, it's a habit. Telling yourself you don't have time is an excuse. If you're telling yourself that the time has passed for you to go become a veterinarian, that's somebody's comment that I saw today on Instagram. If you're telling yourself that the time has passed for you to build a business, that the time has passed for you to do whatever it is, here's what I know about you. You're just afraid. You're just afraid of taking the step. And it's a lot easier to use the excuse that you don't have time, because if you tell yourself you don't have time, guess what? You're not going to find the time, and you're not going to force yourself to make the time to make working on that dream a priority. You know, one of the things that I wear right now is my little My Intent bracelet, this little thing, and my word for the year is deliberate. And when it comes to time, you have to be deliberate because you have plenty of time. It's a matter of whether or not you're being deliberate about how you're using it. And that's the thing that you have to stop. You got to stop giving your time away. You got to stop wasting your time with people you don't care about. You got to stop wasting time listening to the excuses from the past. They don't apply. You can make anything happen if you just start putting in the work. And that's going to require you to get deliberate about making the time to do the work. And you can do the work that you need to do to change your life 10 minutes a day. That's it. Start working 10 minutes a day. Start taking an online course. Start investigating going back to school. Start following people that inspire you around launching your own business. You have time. So stop with the habit of telling yourself you don't. Do we have any questions, Mandy?
Yeah, we do. From Diane on Facebook. It's a good one.
Diane on Facebook.
She wants to go to school to learn sign language to be an interpreter.
Great.
Her daughter's a junior in high school, and she wants to know if she should wait until her daughter graduates.
No. Okay, so she wants to know if she should wait until her daughter graduates to go back to school. Absolutely not. Let me tell you something, parents. The only way your kids are going to learn how to pursue their dreams and their goals is if you model it. Do you want your daughter to be the kind of adult female, to be a woman that puts everybody else's needs ahead of her? Do you want your daughter to start to think the same lies that we were all trained to believe, that there is a time to do certain thing and a right time? The only right time is now. The only right time to really push yourself to make a change is right now. And so what your daughter is going to learn when she sees you going back to school and she sees you managing your time so that you're focused on priorities that matter to you is she's going to be learning the skill of doing it for herself. It's one of the best things that you could possibly do. My mother did this when I was in 9th grade. She opened up a retail store when I was in 9th grade. She opened up a kitchen retail store, and it was the coolest thing to see my mom pursuing something that was important to her. It was the coolest thing to see my mom launch her own business. and to realize, wow, you know, I want to be that kind of person. And I can be a great mom, and I can also have a business. And the way your kids learn that kind of thing is they watch you do it.
I simply want to have self-worth because I feel I lost it 8 years ago.
I feel I lost my self-worth 8 years ago. What else is this person saying?
Not really sure how I could break that category down. Any examples? Or is my answer to just have some of it back? So going back to the visualization, how do you break down something that is specific when it comes to improving and increasing your self-worth?
Improving and increasing your self-worth. How do you break it down? Okay, so one of the fastest ways to figure out a goal, if you're just flummoxed, you're like, I just don't even know what to work on here. I feel like I'm in such a hole. I don't even know how to begin. You can do it one of two ways. Because it's not necessarily about a massive transformation. I'm all about incremental progress. And so one of the things that you can do if you're stuck is you could say, okay, I don't know what the heck to do about increasing my self-worth. So here's how you start. If you had more self-worth, what are the things that you would be doing that you're not doing right now? So project yourself into a future state where your self-worth is awesome. What are the things that you do when you live in that state? And that visualization and jumping into the future should give you a clue as to what changes you need to make right now. That's one way that you can handle it. And you can do that with friendships. If your friendships were a 10, what are the things that you would be doing that you're not doing now? If your love life were a 10, what are the things you would be doing that you're not doing now? If your work was a 10, what are the things you would be doing that you're not doing now? That is a way for you to reverse engineer what your goals can be. Another thing that you could do is you could do the opposite. You could say to yourself, how has having no self-worth held me back? Like, get in touch with the pain. And we're going to talk a lot about this tomorrow when we dig deeper into mindset. Get in touch with the pain of what has having low self-worth cost you? How have you held yourself back? And by getting in touch with the pain, you might be inspired to say, wow, I want to stop doing that to myself. I don't believe in toxic positivity. I don't believe that you just like put a positive spin on things and things will disappear and be fine. That's not how the world works. There are very real challenges that you may be facing. You may be facing abuse, violence. You may be up against structural and systematic racism and bias and discrimination. You may be facing extreme poverty. You may be facing all kinds of very real and traumatic things in your life. Simply putting a positive spin on things will not change those very real obstacles. What it changes is you. When you change how you look at things, it changes your ability to deal with the things in your life. It changes your ability to face hard things, and it gives you the courage and the confidence and the resilience and the stamina to chip away at these large obstacles or these past experiences that created trauma or negative self-talk. It's going to give you the ability to take the action that you need. And so when you hear me talk about mindset, I want you to understand this doesn't make things disappear. It actually empowers you to be your greatest self, to face the stuff that's very difficult. You know, because confidence, courage, resilience, these are all things that are inside you. And you don't build this stuff in the high moments. You build your confidence and your courage and your resilience in the low moments. It's like steel. It's forged in the fire of your life. And so even in those moments where you feel like life is punching you in the face and you just want to give up and you have that like, I can't handle this anymore and why does this keep happening to me? I am telling you, do not give up because you are building your inner strength every step of the way through these experiences that you're facing in your life. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying you deserve it. I'm saying you have the power within you to face whatever you're dealing with, to find your strength, and to actually change yourself and the situation and the trajectory that you're on for the better. I think it wasn't until I discovered the high five habit that I profoundly realized how much self-hatred I was dealing with.
Mm.
And
Despite everything else, yeah.
well, and this I think is a really big piece of the power of this, especially if you're somebody who's achievement oriented, and everybody that listens to this podcast feels a big calling and wants to do more in the world and make a bigger difference and a bigger impact. There's a real danger that's very common, Jay, that you start to marry, or you've always married, being worthy or lovable with what you're doing and what you're achieving. And it works both ways in terms of if you don't have the number on the scale, it means, again, the dust on the mirror. You are not worthy because you haven't achieved it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us that have achieved some things that we've set out to do, what happens is you find that as soon as you achieve the thing, you actually need to do something else.
Bigger,
better, because it was a thing that you achieved that made you lovable or worthy. And the real trick, and this is everything, is being able to know and feel in your bones that you are lovable and worthy just because you're breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge breakthrough for me.
Yeah.
And so, no, I never celebrated because I think I was so married to this idea that unless I'm doing or winning or achieving, and it happens so subtly when you're little because you start to get so much positive praise when you get a good grade or when you do something at school or when you make your mates laugh or whatever it might be, that you start to go, oh, that's what love feels like. Oh, if I do that. And so you outsource love and validation to outside things. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you, we all got to learn how to bring it back home and anchor the validation and love that you need where you are right now every single day. And it's only in discovering this that I had to confront just how much I was beating myself up, just how much I was tearing myself down, and how I was chasing these things. Because what I actually wanted was to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask yourself, okay, great, you want to make $1 million. Why? There's a feeling that you're looking for from that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can start to work on bringing that feeling into your day-to-day life for yourself, it changes the way that you go about achieving things. Like I didn't even enjoy half the stuff that I did because I was constantly maniacally focused on the things that weren't working rather than the 100 things that were. And the same is true with everybody's day. You don't even know the number of amazing things you do every day. You feed the dog, high five. You got the kids at school, high five. You read 10 pages of the book, high five. You said a nice thing to a stranger, high five. You got something done at work, high five. You got through 70% of your inbox, high five. Instead, you focus and ruminate on the one thing you didn't get to, and then you use that as evidence, again, dust on the mirror, to see a human being that's not measuring up and never will, and all that stuff their stupid 4th grade teacher said to you must be true, dust on the mirror. No, you need to interrupt this. If you could always just look in the mirror and see a human being that's trying and that's worthy of a high five, and a human being that failed and okay, we're going to brush it off and that's worthy of a high five. Somebody who is running the marathon of life that you're going to celebrate every step of the way. And, you know, I also want to take this and flip this in the opposite because I think this is where people really get mucked up. This happened in my own marriage. And it's only a recent discovery between Chris and I. And that is that we had the opposite thing happen, Jay. So when Chris and his best friend went into the restaurant business and they poured 7 years into it and gave it their go, and at the end of the day, they sold it, you know, for pennies on the dollar to the next investor, and they did not return the profit that they had hoped they would return to their investors. Now, what was interesting about watching this all go down is that our best friend, who was Chris's partner, was able to leave the experience and go, okay, entrepreneurship. I'm so proud of us. We put in so much work. We built something amazing. We had an incredible brand. We were incredible leaders. Did we return the profit? No. But that's not everything in life. And he moved on. My husband could not. He literally said, because I didn't achieve, because I failed, I am a failure who is not worthy of love. And for 7 years, he has walked into a bathroom with the dust that has said, I am a failure. And so as you have been looking for, why doesn't she love me more? somebody who fails goes, how can you still love me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's only until, it doesn't matter how much I love the guy, it doesn't matter how much I build him up. And, I'm so proud of everything that he's done and all the stuff that Chris is doing. And he's had a massive breakthrough in this. And part of it is through the high five habit because of the resistance. But I can't do that. Look at the failure that I've been.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't love yourself, you won't allow somebody else to love you.
Yeah.
And so when you can separate what you're doing from your soul and your intention and your spirit and your humanity, and you can stand with yourself every morning, and that high five doesn't necessarily become celebration, it becomes acceptance, and it becomes compassion, and it becomes acknowledgement, and then it becomes slowly celebration and momentum and forward energy that you need when life drags you down.
Yeah.
And so it's really a profound point you just made, that it's only when you love yourself for breathing, for living, for being, just as you are, that level of acceptance that we so want from everybody else. And I'm telling you, you have an opportunity to do it for yourself by keeping your promises, by being kind to yourself, by standing before yourself and seeing a human being who needs you and who loves you and who's going to be with you your whole life.
You also tend to get a lot of positive, emotion and praise when you're achieving those things. At least I did too. And I think that's why I chased it so much. I had fused the doing with being lovable, the achieving with being worthy. And so as I walk into the bathroom that second morning and the sort of profound nature of what was unfolding started to hit me, I have this second epiphany as I'm brushing my teeth. And that is this. Every morning, there are two people in the bathroom. There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror who needs you. They are trying so hard. They are waiting for you to wake up and to realize that they're there. They need your encouragement. They need your support. They need your love. They are so tired of you picking them apart and thinking about all the things that are going wrong. And as I put my toothbrush down, I remembered the fact that yesterday, the day before, I had been researching, how do I need to change right now? Because I have all these people on my team. How am I going to show up for my family? And I found this piece of research from Harvard that says that if you take just less than a minute of intentional reflection about how you're going to show up for the people that you're leading, and this could apply to your family, anybody, it changes your focus, your productivity, it changes your mood, it changes how you show up, your ability to impact. And for whatever reason in that moment, it all fused together. And I thought, well, what if I do that for me? And I asked myself a question I had never asked myself before. And it was this. Who do you need me to be today? Like I asked the woman in the mirror, who do you need me to be today? How can I show up for you? And, what kind of popped into my mind that morning was like, well, it'd be nice if you were kinder to me because I'm trying really hard. And then the next one was, it'd be great if you could muster up some optimism here. Having fun today. It's like, hell, throw me a lifeline, Mel. And as I thought about it, I then went and I raised my hand and I sealed it with this high five. And something like, it just felt like this fusion with the person in the mirror. And that's when I really got it. I got that this is so much deeper and more profound because what I'm actually doing is I'm fulfilling my fundamental emotional needs. I am seeing myself. I am meeting myself where I am. I am affirming my unique need. And I am celebrating myself exactly where I am right now, whether it's challenging, whether it's exhilarating. I am with myself right in that moment in a way that I don't know if I had ever been.
I think it's really, pivotal. And I want to reiterate this because I think it's such a great point of understanding. Back to that onion analogy again, when you said there's two people, right? And I could go as far to say that so many of us have different masks, different selves, right? The core, like we were just talking about, is who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
So many times in our day to day, we are showing up in all of these different ways, playing all of these different roles. And there is an us that we need to, and the journey becomes about connecting back to. So a lot of us are kind of at odds with even ourselves in so many moments because we're so practiced at showing up in all of these other ways that we've lost so much sight of the authentic core within each of us. And what you're also illustrating, I think that's so important, is the practice of that reconnection, right? And many of us start by not knowing, not seeing ourselves, not knowing what there is even to see or to self-express. For me, I share this story often. When I came to the awareness that I, like you and like many of us, filter the whole world through everyone else and what their needs may be, I had a big gaping hole of knowledge. I didn't know myself. I didn't really know that person in the mirror. I did know that we do, I believe, as humans universally, I don't care where you're signing onto this live right now around the globe, we have at our core the desire to be seen, to be heard, to be just in full self-expression, and for that to be enough. Yet I didn't know who that person was. So I share this because I do want to speak to the people who, as we begin to look in the mirror, and for a lot of us, it might just be a concept. Okay, there's an authentic self in there where I don't know where that person is. I don't know what that person needs yet. And that's when we begin the journey to explore. Because I, like many of us, didn't know at first, was profoundly uncomfortable with even beginning to ask those questions. What do I need right now? Can I just be enough in this moment? And it is the question that sets us off into the journey. And I share that because I know a lot of us, we want to know the answers, or we think we should, and then we shame ourselves out of even taking the journey into exploring those. But for me, I'll share, that's how my journey began. Not knowing at all, with incredible discomfort, even around stopping to even ask myself those questions. And of course, like you said, it does not happen overnight. I say there's no light switch here. Oh, I heal now. And again, I want to highlight the practice of it, right? Because there's concepts, there's books, there's, people and teachers and tools and techniques, and they're all in theory until, like I say, we bridge the gap from theory into action. And that's what I've always resonated so much with your work, from the 5 second, this idea of the tool. How do I practically apply this? And now, of course, the high five habit. How do I turn this idea into a daily action that can actually help me create the change that I'm looking for, to A, reconnect with that person beneath, and B, to over time grow to love them. Over time, grow to love them.
I struggled with anxiety for 30 years. I took Zoloft for 2.5 decades, and it was a life changer. But it wasn't until I understood my nervous system's role in this, and the default beat down negative critic, and how that keeps your anxiety alive, and how you can use high five habits to A, regulate your nervous system, which is critical, because remember, when your nervous system is on edge, and when your nervous system is what psychologists call dysregulated, or you have a trauma response programmed into your nervous system, and let's be honest, every single one of us has experienced trauma on some level.
Yeah.
And after these last 18 months, everybody's nervous system is at a on edge setting.
Yeah.
Are we masks? Are we not masks? Are we in quarantine? Are we not? Are the kids going back to school? Are they not going back to school? Are we getting on planes? Are we not getting on planes? Am I allowed to leave the country? Can I not? Like, you're constantly in this state of uncertainty. So I want you to take a second habit that is going to help tremendously with anxiety. It also helps with focus, and I'll explain how in a minute. So I call this habit, and we write about it and explain the science behind it in this book, The High Five Habit. It's called high-fiving your heart. And here's how you're going to do it. So high-fiving your heart is a way to take advantage of your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve, as you know, you talk about this, runs from your seat all the way to the top of your head. It goes through every major organ. It goes through your vocal cords. Your vagus nerve is literally a treasure that you need to discover. It is the on-off switch that helps you switch between your sympathetic, which is your on-edge, anxiety-ridden, stressed out, dysregulated nervous system, And the switch to a calm, cool, grounded nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system. So what you can do every single morning, and I do this right when I get out of bed. So the alarm rings. I use the 5-second rule. I count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that helps me get out of bed. I move on one. And mornings are always hard for me. I hate getting out of bed. I love how cozy the bed is. If I were left to my own devices, Fern, I would lay in bed and I would stare at the ceiling and I would think about all the what ifs that could go wrong today. And I would slowly become a human pot roast, marinating in fear, and anxiety and panic and overwhelm and depression would pin me to that bed like a gravity blanket. And I would lay there for hours. That's what I do when I'm in distress. I love to just soak up all that anxiety. So I get out of bed. That's really important for me. Then I make my bed. And then I do this thing where I take my hands, and I got these big mitts. So I, like put them right in the center of my chest, but you want to get it right. Make sure your hands are touching your heart because your vagus nerve runs through your heart. And you're going to press against your chest. This is high-fiving your heart. And then you're going to take a deep breath. And then you're going to say these 3 sentences. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. And you're going to repeat those sentences over and over and over again. And what's going to happen is wild. You are going to feel your nervous system calm down. You're going to feel yourself, like your being, come back into your body. I call this body confidence. It's being comfortable, literally comfortable in your own skin. And I do this first thing in the morning for a very important reason. First of all, this was new research to me, but I talked to this amazing expert in neuroscience called her name's Dr. Judy Willis. She was at UCLA for a long time, and she's been researching forever the connection between your nervous system and your brain's ability to learn new information. And her research shows that when your nervous system is on edge, which everybody's is, you're waiting for the next shoe to drop, you feel nervous, you can't quite focus, you are having trouble sleeping, you're constantly having your mind wander, your breath is sort of shallow. Everybody feels this way right now because of our shared experience and what we're living through. When your nervous system is in that state, it is impossible for the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that you use when you're learning new behavior or when you're really focusing on something, it's impossible for it to engage. And, I can explain this. Like if somebody were to come running into your room right now and scream, the house is on fire, the house is on fire. First of all, your nervous system would go into a state of being on edge and it would go into alarm mode to alert you. But you wouldn't be able to do a math problem in that moment because your nervous system is taken over. And so if you're struggling with focus right now, and who isn't, if you're constantly trapped in that what if loop where you're worried, and you can't bring your attention to something optimistic or positive, if you're having trouble feeling like you're in control, I want you to also add into your morning routine this high five to your heart, because I want you to settle into your body and I want you to activate your vagus nerve. Because if you can start your day with a calm and cool nervous system, you've got a fighting chance to not only stay in control, but to make progress on something that matters, to not be so reactive to everything going on around you and to feel like your emotions are going to hijack you. And then when you walk into the bathroom and you brush your teeth and you have this moment with yourself, your brain is now ready to think about the day ahead and to think about it in an optimistic way and to think about how you want to show up and to work for you. See, what I love about all these tools that I've uncovered just by, dumb luck and by being at a bottom moment in my own life is that there's so much about the way your body's trying to help you, your vagus nerve, The fact that the filter in your brain, the RAS, can actually change in real time and filter how it sees the world when you use these tools I'm teaching you. The fact that your subconscious mind is already programmed with all the positive association with the high five. The fact that your nervous system recognizes raising your hands as celebratory. This is your body, your nervous system, your mind trying to help you be happy, help you be positive, help you get back to the state that you were frankly born in.
So what does that mean to you, Jenna?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
So here's the thing. When I think about the question, how are you really, or how am I really? Most of us don't want to answer it because we know if we're honest and the answer is I'm not okay, or I'm not happy, or I'm not good, that then we have to do something about it. It's like we have to confront that reality, and that's what will set you free, really. And so one of the things that I think it's wrong so often in this world with so much information is that we try to go so big so fast that all of a sudden when we crash, we say, why did I ever think I could do that? Who was I to think I could follow through? Who was I to think that I could start the business or lose the weight or get healthier or seek out the relationship? And what we're forgetting is that, like, if we can start to make the smallest progress, like progress that no one can see, progress that isn't Instagrammable, progress that just simply proves to ourselves that we are actually following through, that we are actually progressing and moving forward, that we are actually capable. It's like we're strengthened, and when we're strengthened, the confidence shows up, and when we're confident, we show up in a different way, and when we show up in a different way, we change, and when we change, everything happens. And so it's like we live in a world that literally wants everything to be pretty, and we want it to be showcased. It's like, imagine if you and I were sitting in Vermont, and I was like, hey, Mel, let's go grab some chairs and watch this tree grow. It would be so boring, right? Nobody would do it, because on the outside, what we see, we're not seeing anything happening. But underneath the surface, those roots are strengthening and lengthening and growing and reaching and giving this growth the roots that it needs to be sustained. And so to me, it's like when we think about what are we going to do about it, we often try to go big. We go too big, and then we live in this shame cycle that we didn't follow through, that of course we weren't able to do it, when in reality, we need to make such tiny little actions. There's a quote in the book that talks from BJ Fogg where it's like, pick the most minuscule, tiny little steps to progress so that you can build up your belief in yourself. Because the way you show up to your battles is directly linked to the warrior you believe you are. And most people don't even feel like a warrior today. Most people don't even feel like they can show up to the battle. And so it's like, how do we build up our confidence through such infinitely small progress that no one else will see, but that we can feel? That's what I think is the difference.
You know, I've been working on something that I don't think anybody can see. I've started to notice after a couple years of therapy and all these big changes that I put into place, and I wasn't even aware of it. And heck, this is even like with the high five habit that, you know, I started to break through the self-criticism, and the high five habit profoundly changed how I see myself. But I still had a layer deeper, Jenna, a dialogue that I think is generational in the women in my life, of being in conflict about what's going on and simultaneously feeling grief and regret. I've been really blown away and really sad by how much I've tortured myself because I have this habit of focusing on what's wrong and focusing on what I didn't do in the past. And I live there because the women in my life, my grandmothers, my mom, like that's their kind of negative mental experience. And so I, every day, and none of you can see this, I catch myself going there.
Yeah.
I catch myself slowly torturing myself that where I am isn't the right place, that what I'm doing isn't the right thing, and it is robbing me of what you said, which is creating fat minutes where you can feel the full 60 seconds and be present to it. And so this is something, everybody, that I am working on every single day that nobody can see. It's sort of like when you're doing sit-ups for the first time, you're not going to see any change in the mirror for probably 8 weeks. And I think the same is true for me. And the incremental stuff that I'm doing, what are you going to do about it? How are you really? Because the truth is, how are you really is, how am I really is I'm doing all this stuff, but in here, I'm like torturing myself because of old mental habits. And I am committed to catching it and noticing it. And then all I do to break that apart, Jenna, is I try to have what you call a fat minute. I try to just go, where am I?
Yeah. Yes. It's all about awareness. What's so crazy is that for so long, I totally believed that I could never meditate. I was like, my brain doesn't work that way. I can't slow it down. I can't not think of anything. Like, I thought that meditating was like emptying your mind, when in reality, it's just having an awareness for your thoughts. And when I shifted it, I am like obsessed with meditation. Like, before I went on the Today Show, I freaking meditated. I was like, who am I? Like, I don't even understand, but it's wild how much of our lives we go through without noticing, whether it's the people, the feelings, how we're really, our thoughts, our narratives, the things that we're beating ourselves up for. We go through and we just don't even notice. We don't even feel it. Like, there's a chapter in my book about feeling your feelings. Like, it's not about just letting happiness be the destination in our life. It's moving through life with this richness of feeling our feelings. Our feelings are communicating things to us. And so it's all about awareness. And it's like, when you start to pay attention, man, your life becomes more vibrant. And that richness of the vibrancy, even the highs and the lows, it makes you feel your life. It makes you awake to it in a totally different way. I love that.
I want to just say one thing.
Do you need to pick somebody up from the airport? I'm slightly concerned here.
Yeah, I do. It's okay. She'll just start anxiety calling. And she started calling in. She's calling Chris. She asked me to trigger. It's all good. We're going to go get her. And in the middle of the panic attack, by the way, the ember is flaming because she's like, oh, and can we stop at Java Juice and get coffee? I'm like, oh,
deal.
Okay. So here's one thing I want to say about that. Feeling your feelings can be terrifying for those of us like me who have spent a lifetime keeping themselves busy or drunk at night. Not drunk, but, buzzed, so that I didn't have to feel. Like, I think one of the reasons why, when I really figured out sort of what I was passionate about, writing, coaching, speaking, that I threw myself into it, is because when I was focused on something, blaming my feelings and my mind wasn't spinning. And so I've been doing everything. And how are you really? And the slowing down, the getting back into my life, the being honest with myself about how the busyness was really not making me happy. And I will tell you guys that when you start to slow down and you start to truly feel what's there that you've been numbing or running away from or like arguing against, that bridge between the old you and the transition to truly like that ember inside you of how you want to feel in your life, which is in it and present to it. Crossing that bridge can be terrifying, but you can do it. And so it goes back to what we started in the very beginning. There is an ember that's burning inside you, even if you feel like a burnt toast piece of grist pile of ashes. That I hope that this conversation has fanned so that you feel it burning a little bit of yearning. The book is How Are You Really? My friend is Jenna. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.